Hi, Rabbi Chaim. Oh, it's so good to speak to you. Thanks for coming on. We were going to talk about a rundown to a very special Passover that we have this year. Tell us a little bit more.
So first of all, I just wanted to a little bit about the statistics of it. So the first day of Passover being on a Sunday is actually a relatively rare occurrence. So it happens about 10% of the time, less than 10% of the time. But the oddities of the Hebrew calendar is that sometimes it can happen a few times in a row, like we have it now, and then again in a few years time it's going to happen again. But sometimes decades go by and it hasn't happened. And one of my favorite sugiot in the Talmud is actually what happened in one year when Passover landed on a Sunday and they forgot what to do. And upstart young scholar by the name of Hillel finds the solution to the problem, and that changes the course of all of rabbinic Judaism. So there's lots of interesting things about that, but it's very strange, very odd for Sunday starting Pesach, and that makes it quite special.
So tell us a little bit about the nuts and bolts of how we would entertain starting Passover. Leila Seder, the first night of Seder is on Motzei Shabbat. It's a bit of a tongue twister.
Right, okay. So the problem is that the day before most festivals is nothing, but the day before Pesach is actually a very busy day, and it always was a very busy day. And there are two important imperatives that are competing with each other when it lands on a Shabbat. The first is that you want to prepare for Pesach and do everything to prepare for Pesach. And one of the rules of preparing for Pesach and one of the rules of the day before Pesach is that you really shouldn't eat very much at all. And you definitely shouldn't be eating matzah. And the reason for that is that the rabbis wanted you to come to a festival meal just feeling hungry so that you enjoy that meal. You're not supposed to eat on a Friday afternoon or eat a big meal on a Friday afternoon so that you enjoy the Shabbat meal. And the same way, you're not really supposed to have significant meals on the afternoon or the day before the Seder so that you really enjoy the Seder meal. The other thing is that the rabbis don't want you eating matzah before Pesach because they want the flavor of the matzah and the first bite of matzah, which is the fulfilling of the mitzvah of eating matzah on Pesach, to be one that you do looking forward to it in anticipation, that you really, really enjoy that bite of matzah. And if you're already full of it because you've been eating it all the time, you're not going to enjoy that bite the same way. Some communities don't eat matzah on the day before Pesach. Some people not from the beginning of the month of Nisan. And many communities don't eat matzah after Purim. That's my personal custom. After Purim, I finish matzah. And then I actually enjoy matzah and I like eating it during the year. But I wait that month until Pesach to have the first bite of the matzah. So not eating is part of the preparation of Pesach. But when it lands on Shabbat, it runs into another imperative, and that is that one of the commandments of Shabbat is oneg Shabbat, the pleasure, the enjoyment of Shabbat. And part of the enjoyment of Shabbat is eating good meals. And particularly, there's a mitzvah to have shalosh seudot, to have 3 meals on Shabbat. And at least 2 of those meals need to be formal meals. And a formal meal means that it opens with bread or with matzah, which is also considered a kind of bread. So here we bump into the no eating imperative of Pesach with the eat good meals imperative of Shabbat, and we have the don't eat any matzah imperative of Pesach with your meal as a formal meal needs to have bread / matzah in it. And of course, on the eve of Pesach, already from 4 halachic hours into the day, you're not allowed to eat any bread. So all you have to eat on that day, if you want to have a formal meal, is to eat matzah, but it's impossible to do that. So we have these 2 imperatives colliding, and that leaves us with a big dilemma. What can we actually do in order to fulfill both of them?
So what do we do? We have to point out that the 3 meals you're talking about are Friday night dinner and Saturday lunch, and then normally a lighter meal, which we call Sudash Lishit, in the evening. what do we do? And this my arrangement for this week will probably be to have a bready challah meal before I even go to shul in the morning. Can you tell us a little bit how we actually do the run up to the Motzei Shabbat Seder night that we're going to have?
Right. So there are many different innovative ways that people have devised to solve that dilemma. But there are two main ones. And interestingly, one of those is mainly followed by Ashkenazi communities, and one of them is mainly followed by the Sephardi communities. So we'll start with the Ashkenazi communities. The Ashkenazi communities do what you just described. And that is that they start the Shabbat very early in the morning so that they have the Friday night meals, not a problem at all. We will be having, our house will be kosher to Pesach probably from this Wednesday, but we'll have a corner on the side where we still have some chametz. And on Friday night, we'll start the meal with 2 bread rolls for our challahs, and that we'll be eating outside somewhere. And then we'll continue with a kosher to Pesach meal for the rest of the meal. And Shabbat morning, you just do that again, but it has to be before 10 o'clock in the morning. So it means that you get up very early in the morning and you have your lunch before 10 o'clock in the morning. And I would add to that many people don't really eat meals before they did their prayers, their tefillah on Shabbat. So the people who really follow this technique get up very early in the morning. They have the full Shabbat service, 2.5 hours by 9 o'clock in the morning. And then they come back and they have their lunch at between 9 and 10, and then they'll have finished that and gotten the 2 meals out of the way. And the third meal can have fruit and vegetables, and you don't have to have bread in the third meal. So that solves the problem. And that's what I think the majority of Ashkenazi communities do. The Sephardi communities take a different approach. And that is they use something that we call egg matzah. But egg matzah has an interesting halachic position because it doesn't count as being matzah and it doesn't count as being bread. It doesn't count as being matzah because it doesn't follow the basic halachic requirement that matzah needs flour to come in contact with water. And egg matzah is matzah which, instead of using water in the recipe, it uses a fruit juice or egg yolks as the liquid in the recipe, but it doesn't have any water whatsoever. So because water never touches the flour, it doesn't count as being matzah. And it also doesn't count as being bread, because if flour doesn't come in contact with water, it actually doesn't rise and it doesn't become leavened. So it doesn't count as being chametz and it doesn't count as being matzah. And so the Sephardi communities would have their meal at a regular time on Shabbat. They would do their Shabbat all according to the regular patterns, but they would use egg matzah instead of regular matzah. The argument for that is that it's very simple. The argument against that is that even though it halachically doesn't count as being matzah, it looks like matzah and it tastes a bit like matzah. And does that ruin the experience of having matzah on the beginning of Pesach? That's a question mark. Some communities, when they have that matzah on Shabbat, they don't make it in the shape of matzah. They make it in the shape of biscuits. They make it in the shapes of all kinds of interesting things, anything but matzah, so that you don't have, it feels more like you're eating a biscuit than eating actual matzah. I would add, since I put in the disadvantage of the Sephardi approach, disadvantage of the Ashkenazi approach is that getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning, doing a rushed tefillah and eating lunch before you've even had your breakfast also is a little bit crazy. So that's the huge disadvantage of the Ashkenazi approach.
Rabbi Chaim, we'll stop there. Thank you so much for coming on and explaining to us a little bit about the halachot of the run up to this special year of Passover. Lovely to speak to you.
Yeah, and let me just say Chag Sameach to everyone, and look forward to speaking to you some other time.
Chag Sameach.